Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of this tutorial on just general stuff that I personally do on SpeedPaint. If you haven't checked out the first one yet, you might want to. You can check on the link below. Anyways, back where I was saying, I'm just putting general colors in using the same brush. And I like this color right here. And I got that by putting that like brownish orange on it. And I'm actually going to use that. So I'm going to make it darker. And I'm going to add a little bit more red. Because red is the next closest thing to yellow. So I just want to move in that direction. And that'll make it fit more in the piece. I'm going to make it some more darker. And I'm going to add some more red. The darker I go, the more red or whatever the color that it closest to the color palette, which is in this case yellow. So red is the next color from purple. I always add a little bit more of that color. So being as I'm going lighter, I'm actually going to go slightly towards more blue. So that purple comes out a little bit more. That's too pale. Yeah, it's kind of, if you look closely, and like now that I'm bringing this up, you might notice that it's pretty evident that, colors, you layer them over each other, and I don't mean using layers, but I mean like you stack them on each other and stuff like that, and oftentimes I will be like, I don't like that, I'm gonna try this, I don't like that. You know, I mean, it's a process. You figure out the palette of whatever you're doing as you go, I guess. Hello? My undo button's not working. There we go. So yeah, I'm actually using a dark pink. This is like one of the same colors that I used for my Metaton picture last. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip ahead. So here's when I'm going to switch over to the fuzzy default tool that I use. So I'm gonna switch the settings 0 or 1 to 0. So I have my blur. So the blur can be very strong of this brush, and I'm going to add some more shading and lighting, but stuff that's not so textured, so it's not so crazy textured, I suppose. And that's what's so wonderful about this brush, is that because it's so soft, it makes a lot more smoother blending and everything. But the smaller it gets, the less fuzzy it gets. If you notice, it's more distinguishable of its shape. But the bigger it gets, the less it loses that shape and more of fuzzy it is. Which could be super nice for like making some lighting or whatever. But when we're smaller, I'm actually going to lower the opacity because I don't want to see the strokes like that. Because I think that looks gross and defeats the purpose of making it super soft blend. So I'm going to lower the opacity and I noticed that helps get rid of, you can't really see the strokes so much. So again, I'm just going to use the same thing. I'm going to make it darker and brighter, and I'm going to add a little bit more red. I like that one. Let's see if it works. And when it comes to blending and stuff like that, the bigger your brush is, the easier it is to blend. Just something I've noticed. And I'm putting very, very light pressure on the brush. So it's very light, you know. It's not making too much of an impact. She looks so gold in this lighting. That's the thing I like about white. But yeah, also because I'm blending, because color is what makes the lighting and shading, if you haven't noticed. When I want to do blending, I don't just find the colors out of nowhere. I like do an in-between color. You want to use the in-between color. And like I could better explain that, like, in a tutorial that's more about blending and lighting, if you guys want me to do one of those. Because the thing about this tutorial is just a very general tutorial. Like, it's not super in-depth, and I'm like skipping a lot of aspects that I could talk about because it's just way too much to put in. Like, way too much to put in. So yeah. I mean, this is already like, what, freaking 25 minutes, something like that? I don't know when it's gonna be, when it's all edited and everything. But, you know, I mean, I'm just doing basic stuff, and it's already a really long tutorial. And I'm like, not even finished with the picture, so maybe I should, like, bust move a little bit more. And another thing that's important is, finding the focus point of the picture, and mainly focusing on that. Like, this focus point is going to be Toriel's face, so that's the part of the picture that I want to have the most detail, the most work done to it, and everything. Where, like, the rest, such as everything around here on the outside, not Toriel's face, but around where my squigglies are, that I'm not going to worry too much about detail, because your eyes are naturally going to go towards her face, being as it's a portrait picture. And like, if you put too much detail into everywhere else, it'll actually take away from the picture. Alright, so this is just some basic points of shading and lighting. Like, it's not too detailed or anything like that, and it's not clean. So now this is where the detail comes in. Usually I do this on the same layer as this one, but for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to do it on another layer, so you could see the before and after. So this is when I decide to zoom in, and I zoom in pretty close. One of the reasons why I don't zoom in when I just do general stuff is because for me personally, it's easier to find the points of where correct shading and lightings and stuff go when it's zoomed out. Same thing with proportions for me. Where if I'm all close up, I can't see the rest of the piece, and I might like miss where I'm supposed to go. But as far as detail goes, because all of that is already blocked for me, the simple shading and lighting, this stuff that I put in, just like a sketch, it acts like a guideline and a skeleton. And doing that gets a ton of the work done for you. And I also just remembered that Toriel actually has brown eyes, so I'm gonna make him brown. Anyways, so that's on this one. Oh, that's actually really pretty. Alright, so detail stuff. So yeah, when I do detail, I get pretty close depending on the details, especially if it's a focus point, such as the face, and most faces are the focal point in my pictures. That's where I'm gonna do my detail stuff. And usually with detail stuff, I pretty much do it all in my soft oil pastel brush, so that's what I'm gonna get. Yeah. Alright. So, again, because this is a general tutorial and it's already getting really long, I could talk about faces and how I go about painting faces or even drawing faces and stuff like that. Like, I can make a whole tutorial on how I do shading and lighting for faces, and I know I keep using this as an example, but just where like the highlights are on the lips and everything, and like the eyebrows and stuff like that. And same thing with Sans looks, you know, it all applies with like the highlights around the mouth and everything. I could make a whole tutorial on faces and face shapes and different expressions and stuff like that, and how I paint it. But I do not have time to do that in this one because this is just a general tutorial and like it's just basic matters of what I personally do. Speaking of which, I just want to say, if it's up to you guys whether or not you take my advice or adopt my methods of drawing or painting. It's perfectly okay if you do not choose to take them or if they do not work for you. And if you do want to take my advice but it doesn't work for you, do not get discouraged. It's perfectly okay. I mean, everybody has their own form of going about making art and everything, and not always work for everybody. Like, I know, with the one drawing class that I took at a community college last semester, or I guess 2 semesters ago now, because this one just ended, we would work in charcoal a lot of the time, and our professor would teach us, this is how you do it, and and gave practically an in-person tutorial that was really general and didn't really tell anything, but he demonstrated and said this is the correct way to use it and blah blah blah, and it just didn't work for me. It wasn't the fact that I was bad or anything, it was just that particular technique or method that worked for him just didn't work for me, and that's perfectly okay and that's perfectly normal. I mean, there are some people, like, I'll watch some people paint and they don't even use a sketch, they just go right into it, and I'm like, how do you do that? So I guess what I'm saying is, don't get discouraged if my methods do not work for you, or if you have a method that works better for you, go for it. Like, alright, so, being as I have the detail work done, here's a sketch now, because I had erased a lot of it while I was drawing, so a lot of it's missing. This was the base color before I started doing details, and then this is all the detail. Pretty big difference, Yeah. So, now that I'm done with that, I'm gonna go to the background, and I'm just gonna add some more stuff for whatever feels right, I guess. So I'm making this big, and I'm just gonna, I mean, it's a portrait, I don't really have to worry about, a background that's complicated or anything like that, because it's a portrait. Which is really nice, because, I mean, they already pretty much are. So, and I'm gonna darken this side just slightly so that her face pops out more. You don't want to do this too much because it's almost like I don't know. I heard it's like a stereotype in art. There's nothing wrong with it, but it does help essentially to bring one side out more and then the other. It's so funny because I actually learned about that in drawing one. I never used it, and I'm totally using it now, where like this side is darker because the light's coming this way, and this side is lighter because the shadow's this way, so it makes the shadows pop and the lighting pop. That's so funny, and like I didn't even mean for that. How funny. Anyways, yeah, so I'm just gonna play around with the background until I like it. I don't know. Nice little cute painted portrait of Toriel. Okay, and so now that I'm done with all of that, so let's get rid of this white layer because it doesn't even count. So that's all like the arting or whatever I did, and I didn't use any overlay layers or anything like that to brighten anything up. That's all just using the colors that I used. Alright, so I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 for the glasses, which I don't really count that, because normally I would do that on its own layer. And normally I would do the detail work on the same layer as the... So normally this would be just 4 layers for me, but because of the tutorial and I wanted to show you the detail versus the not detailed shading, I used 5 layers. So usually when I'm done with a picture like this and I'm happy with it, I'll go to guided and I'll go to the levels, and this is where you can mess around with the like contrast and like the darkness. Like this is messing around with contrast, this is brightness, and there's a big difference between lighting and brightness. Big difference. But anyway, so this adds a bit of brightness, which is crazy, and then this is contrast, which I like to use both a little bit. Kind of makes things pop more live with the piece. And then this is adding color, so I'm under red, so this takes away red. Ugh. And then this adds red, and then this takes away green, this adds green, stuff like that. But yeah, I'll mess around with the colors. That's actually kind of pretty, that like peachy color, but it takes away a lot of the value of the piece, so I'm not going to use it. But I like taking away some green, and it kind of adds like a purple. It actually looks really nice. I like that. But if I add a slightly bit more green, it makes the yellow more bright. Here we go. So yeah, and that's what it looks like with the levels changed. And to show you a before and after, this is without the levels, this is with the levels. Without, with. Without, with. So that's pretty much the end of the tutorial for a general tutorial and just some general stuff that I do. So I guess to wrap it up, I to wrap it up, start with a white background. I do the sketch, I do the background, a flat background color, I do flat colors underneath the sketch, then I do basic shading and lighting, not worrying about detail, and then I do detail after that, and then I'll mess around with the colors, and bam, that's the finished product. So that is the end of my very general tutorial on how I personally paint. I hope you guys liked this. I hope it was at all helpful by any means. And if not, I'm really sorry. I've never done anything like this before. But if it was helpful and you guys would like to see more, it would be wonderful to make more on like specific things, and I would be more than happy to make tutorials on with like a specific subject rather than like a general tutorial. Those I think would be a lot more explained better, and they'd be shorter. So if you guys want a tutorial such as on color or shading or blending, lighting, value, anything, let me know in the comments below, and I would be more than happy to do something like that, especially how it wouldn't be as broad as a subject such as this, which had a ton of different subjects I briefly went over. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys liked this to some degree. And if you haven't checked out my other stuff yet, go ahead and check them out if you're interested. My SpeedPaint videos. So, thanks guys, bye bye and Merry Christmas!